This is private property.
Do you know what they do here? Scamming the weakest in our society.
Buddy, I'm counting to 3.
1, 2, 3. I did it for you. I'm gonna burn this place to the ground.
Will you stomp his ass out?
The story surrounding this film begins long before its first frames ever appeared, shaped by the creative tension between a director known for gritty, heavy-hitting action and a lead actor whose entire career is built on cold precision and controlled explosiveness. What eventually emerged was a project designed from the ground up to deliver pure adrenaline, structured around a character who blends mystery, method, and a very personal form of justice. From the very start, there was a sense that this film was intended to be lean, aggressive, and unapologetically straightforward, anchored in a world where violence has a rhythm and vengeance follows a deliberate code. The filmmaking process leaned heavily into that identity, letting every moment feel sharp, hard-hitting, and stripped of anything unnecessary. At the center stands a solitary figure whose past is as veiled as the title he carries. The concept of someone belonging to a shadowy, specialized faction operating beneath the surface of official structures creates an atmosphere of quiet menace around him. His calm demeanor masks a furnace of skill and experience, making him feel like the kind of person who could dismantle an entire operation with nothing more than instinct and efficiency. Early impressions of the character suggest a man who once walked among systems of extreme discipline and clandestine enforcement, shaped by rules few people even know exist. The film wastes no time transforming that implied history into raw momentum. As pressure builds, his controlled world fractures, setting him on a path where every action is deliberate, precise, and deeply personal. Much of the emotional weight comes from a simple and devastating inciting event that tears open the quiet life he has tried to build. The woman he lives near, someone who represents kindness in a brutal world, becomes the victim of a heartless scheme driven by digital predators who never expect consequences. Her pain becomes the spark that reignites everything the central character once buried. That loss is portrayed with a sense of restraint, letting silence speak louder than any dramatic outburst. In that restraint, the audience feels the truth. He isn't just angry, he is awakened. The shift in his behavior is small, but seismic, as if an instrument with dormant power finally remembers exactly how to operate. From that moment forward, the film transitions into a sequence of escalating confrontations that combine brutal realism with tightly choreographed movement. One of the defining traits of this production is the way its action is captured. Instead of relying solely on spectacle, the filmmakers focus on tactical clarity, clean camera lines, physical authenticity, and the raw weight behind each strike. The lead performer is known for doing much of his own action, and that commitment gives the film a grounded feel. Movements flow from one to the next with no hesitation, whether he's clearing a room, interrogating someone with icy calm, or dismantling an entire network piece by piece. Every encounter expands the audience's understanding of just how deep his abilities truly go. As the narrative rises, the world he once belonged to becomes increasingly significant. Mentions of the organization that trained him create an aura of something ancient, coded, and ruthlessly efficient. This group operates with a philosophy built on balance, control, and intervention at the most extreme moments. They are not protectors of the weak, nor servants of governments. They are a corrective force, stepping in only when corruption reaches a point that threatens the equilibrium. The title held by the main character symbolizes someone who quietly manages chaos, removing threats with the precision of tending a hive. It is a metaphor the film leans into visually and thematically, tying discipline and destruction together in a single identity. Along the path of vengeance, he finds himself moving through layers of corruption that stretch far upward. What begins as a small crime grows into a web of greed involving people who believe they exist beyond accountability. Their arrogance becomes a structural pillar of the story. Opponents underestimate him repeatedly, treating him as a simple man with no real power. The more they dismiss him, the harsher the consequences become, fueling a cycle that transforms minor antagonists into stepping stones toward the deeper rot hidden inside powerful institutions. Each new confrontation drives home the point that he isn't hunting individuals, he is dismantling an entire ecosystem of exploitation. The film's tone is a careful blend of cold intensity and dark wit. Much of its flavor comes from sharp interactions between characters who underestimate the scope of the danger they face. His responses are minimal, but every word is chosen with an edge. There are moments where the tension teeters between violence and sardonic humor, especially when he meets criminals who attempt bravado without understanding who stands in front of them. These tonal shifts keep the pacing alive, giving brief moments of levity before plunging back into the relentless momentum that defines his mission. One of the most memorable aspects is how the action escalates from controlled, small-scale altercations to full-blown tactical battles. The filmmakers design each sequence to be distinct, giving the audience a sense of progression as the stakes climb higher. What begins with one man acting alone grows into a clash that forces entire security teams, corporate fortresses, and even government defenses to react. The unstoppable nature of the protagonist becomes a narrative device in itself. The more obstacles placed in front of him, the more the audience sees the terrifying efficiency of someone trained to operate outside limitations. His capability becomes a warning. Some individuals are not meant to be provoked. Character dynamics play an essential role in shaping the tension. The antagonist group ranges from reckless opportunists to manipulative elites who treat people as disposable assets. Their internal conflicts add texture to the story. Some underestimate the threat and push forward with arrogance. Others panic when they realize what they have awakened. This mixture creates friction within the villain side, making their downfall feel earned rather than inevitable. The most dangerous among them is confident, protected, and deeply connected, believing that no force, legal or otherwise, can touch him. That belief becomes the ultimate flaw that fuels the climax. As the conflict intensifies, the film explores the moral divide between justice and vengeance. The protagonist's actions are ruthless, but they come from a logical structure that governs his behavior. He doesn't destroy without cause. His methods follow a strict internal code built from years of training. This sense of philosophy elevates the narrative beyond simple action. It becomes a character study about a man who once served a purpose greater than himself, temporarily abandoned that role, and then returned to it not out of duty, but out of emotional necessity. The film repeatedly invites the viewer to consider whether the world is safer with individuals like him acting without permission, or whether they are simply another unchecked force of destruction. The pacing remains tight and persistent. Scenes rarely linger longer than needed, maintaining a forward thrust that mirrors the protagonist's unstoppable advance. Even quieter moments carry tension, offering just enough time for characters to breathe before another confrontation erupts. The editing style emphasizes impact, clean cuts, sharp transitions, and a rhythm that mirrors the heartbeat of someone prepared for combat at any moment. Sound design also plays a significant role, using the thump of blows, the crack of gunfire, and the hum of distant machinery to intensify immersion. The music blends electronic pulses with deep percussion, creating a tone that feels both modern and primal. What sets this film apart from many within its category is its devotion to simplicity. Instead of bloating itself with unnecessary subplots, It focuses on a singular emotional core and builds outward with precision. The emotional weight of the opening tragedy never disappears. It fuels every decision the protagonist makes. That clarity allows the narrative to remain sharp throughout, turning even fast-moving sequences into extensions of the story rather than distractions. The audience is never unsure of his motivation, and that purity of purpose becomes the driving engine behind the entire experience. As the story approaches its peak, every layer built earlier collapses into one explosive confrontation. The lead antagonist, protected by power and reinforced by arrogance, finally realizes the scale of the mistake made by provoking the wrong man. This realization comes too late, amplifying the intensity of the final conflict. The location chosen for the climax serves as a perfect metaphor for the corruption at the center of the narrative, a place where wealth, control, and manipulation converge. Against this backdrop, the protagonist moves like a force of nature, tearing down everything that symbolizes exploitation and greed. The final confrontation is crafted not only as a spectacle of action, but also as a culmination of emotion. The protagonist's face, usually expressionless, begins to show subtle hints of everything he has carried since the tragedy that sparked his journey. His movements, still controlled, carry slightly more weight, as if he is finally allowing himself to feel the full gravity of his mission. When the conflict ends, it does so with a sense of inevitability rather than surprise. The antagonist's downfall feels less like a victory and more like a necessary ending and equilibrium restored by a man who understands that justice sometimes demands a brutal hand. After the dust settles, the film grants a brief moment of reflection. It does not romanticize violence, nor does it frame the protagonist as a flawless champion. Instead, it portrays him as someone who exists in the shadows between moral extremes, shaped by loss, duty, and a code that only a handful of people in his world can comprehend. The closing moments highlight that he isn't seeking praise or recognition. His purpose is internal, driven by a personal compass that guides him toward threats others refuse to confront. Even when peace returns, it feels temporary, as if the world will always need someone like him to step forward when corruption becomes unbearable. What remains after the final frame is an appreciation for the film's directness. It delivers exactly what it promises: a tightly focused, hard-hitting action story anchored by a performer whose physical presence and stoic energy define the entire tone. The production embraces a philosophy of sharp edges and relentless drive, letting its simplicity work as a strength rather than a limitation. Everything from choreography to character motivations serves the central theme of a lone operative reactivating the skills he once buried in order to confront a system rotting from the inside. It is a story about retribution, balance, and the cost of awakening a force the world was never truly prepared to handle. This clarity of intent is what makes the film resonate. It is not trying to redefine the action genre, nor is it interested in reinventing its lead performer's established persona. Instead, it refines everything that works about this style of filmmaking and channels it into a narrative that feels sharp, purposeful, and emotionally grounded. The result is a piece that satisfies fans of intense, character-driven action while offering just enough emotional depth to make the journey meaningful. It stands as another example of what happens when a focused creative vision aligns perfectly with an actor who thrives in roles shaped by precision, danger, and unshakable resolve. The lingering impression is that of a world where hidden forces exist behind everyday life, and where one man can shift the balance with nothing more than discipline, determination, and a willingness to confront what others avoid. Even after the story concludes, The idea of this shadowy order people train to step in when the world becomes too corrupt to fix itself remains fascinating. It hints at future possibilities, deeper layers, and unexplored corners of a cinematic universe that could easily expand further. The protagonist's journey feels complete, yet open, leaving the audience imagining where such a man might go next or what new forces might rise to challenge him. By the time the film's energy settles, it leaves behind a sense of satisfaction built not on complexity, but on the elegant brutality of purpose. It is a reminder that stories fueled by emotional clarity can strike just as hard as those built on sprawling narratives. The central character, defined by loss and awakened by a commitment to restore balance, stands as a representation of relentless determination. And through carefully crafted action, sharp pacing, and a world that feels both dangerous and strangely orderly, the film secures its place as a fierce, focused entry in modern action cinema, one driven by the simple truth that some forces, once roused, cannot be stopped.